They thought they were auctioning a legendary cultivation art. But in truth, it was a trap set thousands of years ago to lure out a bloodline that should have remained hidden. One bid shattered the silence of the entire hall. And from that moment on, powerful forces began to move in the shadows. Hanley didn't bid. He didn't interfere. But somehow, he still walked straight into the center of it all. I really love making these videos, but I need your support to keep going. Please like or become membership on your phone so I don't have to give up on this dream. The next item up for auction is a cultivation art, once practiced by a late-body integration cultivator of considerable renown. Perhaps not all of you recognize this senior's name, but you have certainly heard of the great Joe God vanquishing needle. This technique has demonstrated remarkable power in numerous battles against foreign races. Several versions of this cultivation art have circulated, and even members of the demon race have cultivated it. The version presented today is the original edition personally created by the five-spirit True Lord in ancient times. Its value should be self-evident. Most importantly, this cultivation art allows the user to temporarily convert their magic power into a different attribute. However, its requirements are extremely strict. First, only cultivators at or above the nascent soul stage may attempt to practice it. Second, the cultivator must possess a 5-elemental spiritual root. There are additional conditions, but none are insurmountable, so I will not list them in detail. We can guarantee the completeness of this cultivation art, and the successful bidder may verify it personally. One more point. Although this technique is powerful among all who have practiced it, only the five-spirit True Lord advanced to the body integration stage. We cannot determine whether others failed due to improper usage or unforeseen complications, but most did not progress beyond the deity transformation stage. Even so, the five-spirit True Lord's achievements prove that this cultivation art has the potential to reach great heights. That will be all for my introduction. This technique is known as the yin-yang extreme mantra. Fellow Taoists may now begin bidding. The starting price is 20 million spirit stones, with a minimum increment of 1 million spirit stones. After the white-robed elder finished his smooth introduction, the middle-aged scholar stepped forward with a faint smile. He retrieved a wooden box from his storage bracelet. Inside lay a golden jade slip, emitting a soft glow, the cultivation art itself. The great Joe God vanquishing needle was widely known, and many cultivators present were visibly interested in such a legendary item. As for the prerequisites, few paid them any attention. Only deity transformation cultivators or higher were allowed to attend this auction, so the cultivation level requirement posed no issue. As for the 5-elemental spiritual root, it was already a necessary condition for reaching the spatial tempering stage. All present were striving toward that goal, though how many would succeed remained uncertain. However, the white-robed elder had clearly stated that this cultivation art was extremely difficult to master, and that very few practitioners advanced far with it. This caused many to hesitate. Han Li was among them. Although the yin-yang extreme mantra was undoubtedly powerful, its difficulty immediately diminished his interest. In terms of strength, his dual cultivation of magic power and body refinement was not inferior. Moreover, a starting price of 20 million spirit stones was far beyond what he would spend on mere curiosity. Nevertheless, some cultivators were confident in their aptitude and remained interested. While the high price discouraged many, after only 2 rounds of bidding, a cold voice sounded. 40 million. A brief silence followed. All eyes widened. The bidder was the same individual who had previously competed with Han Li for the true spirit scales. Such a sudden and decisive bid left the deity transformation cultivators completely stunned. Even those at the spatial tempering stage who had been considering the item fell silent. Everyone began to speculate about the bidder's identity. A sum of this magnitude was comparable to the entire wealth of an average spatial tempering cultivator. Hanley felt some curiosity as well, but since it did not concern him, he did not dwell on it. With the sale concluded, the auction came to an end. At that moment, restrictions activated within all the stone chambers. Hanley was enveloped in white light and teleported out, appearing in a corridor outside the auction hall. Flashes of spiritual light followed in rapid succession as other cultivators arrived one after another. All of them were shrouded in silver light concealing their identities. Hanli paid no attention to the others and walked directly toward the exit of the profound Zenith Hall. Although the auction had ended, he did not intend to return to the stone tower. Instead, he planned to leave Deep Heaven City and return to his cave abode. He still had half a year before his next patrol assignment. During this time, he needed to refine several batches of spirit medicine. His first priority was to produce clear jade pills. With a steady supply, his cultivation would remain stable for the foreseeable future. As for the 3 true spirit scales, he had no intention of refining them immediately. He would study them carefully first to avoid wasting their potential. After leaving the profound Zenith Hall, Hanli flew over the city walls and headed toward the distant wilderness. Meanwhile, deep within the hall, inside a chamber, protected by multiple layers of restrictions, 2 figures remained. One was a kindly-looking elder in white robes, standing with his hands behind his back. His expression was respectful. He was the elder surnamed Qi. Seated casually before him was a young man in purple robes. His features were refined, and a vivid red mole near the corner of his lips stood out distinctly. The elder spoke with deference. "Please rest assured, my lord. Although that individual used a secret technique to conceal her appearance, my purple light spirit eyes saw through it. The one who acquired the yin-yang extreme mantra is indeed a female cultivator. However, she does not resemble any of the portraits you provided. In fact, her appearance is quite unattractive." This renowned refinement master of Deep Heaven City addressed himself as a servant before the young man. If others witnessed this, they would be shocked. A faint smile appeared on the young man's face. "There is no need for confusion, old man Qi. A female cultivator, capable of spending such a vast amount of spirit stones, must belong to either the Ye family or the Gu family. Like our Long family, both are ancient true spirit families. Their bloodlines can only be inherited by women. Our family controls auction houses across the 3 human regions, while those 2 families control numerous top-grade spirit stone mines. However, their members are few and they rarely appear in public. Their bloodlines have always remained a secret. Now it seems likely that one of them has inherited the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline, one of the strongest in the spirit realm, comparable to our true dragon bloodline. It appears our gamble was correct. Members of these hidden families have indeed come to Deep Heaven City in disguise to cultivate," the young man said calmly. "You are most perceptive, my lord. The yin-yang extreme mantra is extremely important for those with the Heavenly Phoenix bloodline. Only a top-tier technique utilizing all 5 elements can fully awaken that bloodline. She has no way of knowing that this cultivation art is actually a trap left behind in ancient times," the elder said with a chuckle. "The foresight of our ancestors is beyond us. If my true dragon bloodline were not exceptionally strong, the elders would not have supported me. To avoid suspicion, we even placed the Black Killin scales and sea-raising halberd up for auction. Our scouts also leaked information in advance to the true spirit families. Otherwise, this plan would not have progressed so smoothly. Fortunately, the items fetched good prices. One even secured several 10,000-year spirit herbs, so our losses are limited. By the way, have you identified the cultivator who bought the true spirit scales?" the young man asked. The elder hesitated briefly before replying. "My lord, as you know, my purple light spirit eyes can only be used 3 times in my life. I dared not expend the final use on that individual. I could only determine that he is not at the spatial tempering stage, but merely at the deity transformation stage. However, he likely possesses more than those 5 spirit herbs. Could he be from the Run family? Their bloodline is unremarkable, but they excel at cultivating spirit herbs. That is possible. If he truly belongs to the Run family, then we should not interfere. They are aligned with the Heavenly Spirit Sovereign," the young man said, frowning slightly. "Indeed, my lord. Even if our family does not fear the 3 emperors, it is not worth provoking them over a few spirit herbs." The elder agreed. After a brief pause, the young man spoke again, his tone gentler. Using your purple light spirit eyes must have affected your cultivation. Once my affairs here are settled, I will conduct a blood sacrifice to restore your strength. Thank you, my lord. The elder bowed deeply, unable to conceal his satisfaction. The young man nodded, then fell silent, lost in thought. Several days later, Han Li arrived near the mountain range where his cave abode was located. More than 500 kilometers away, two figures were already locked in a tense confrontation. Brother Jin, why have you followed me all the way here? Have I done something to offend you? The speaker was none other than the cultivator who had once competed with Han Li for that plot of spirit land. Standing opposite him was the plump man surnamed Jin, whom he had previously encountered outside the heavenly jade pavilion. The two appeared cordial on the surface, yet the atmosphere between them was tense, as if a clash could erupt at any moment. Of course not, Brother Wang. I was merely passing by this area. When I saw you stop here, I thought I would come over and greet you. The fat man replied with an innocent expression. Passing by, and you came to greet me? The man sneered. Do you take me for a fool? Who would come to such a remote place without reason? And if it was just a greeting, was it necessary to follow me for nearly 10,000 kilometers while concealing your presence? Ha ha ha. I found it rather curious myself that you would come here, the fat man said, his eyes narrowing slightly with a calculating glint. Why not remain in your cave abode and cultivate? If I remember correctly, this is the very plot of spirit land you once fought for and ultimately lost. Must I now explain myself to you, Brother Jin? The man's expression darkened considerably. No need for anger, Brother Wang, the fat man said calmly. I am only reminding you that this spirit land now has an owner. I feared you might act rashly and cause trouble beyond your ability to resolve. What exactly are you searching for here? Why not tell me? I may be able to assist. The man let out a cold snort and remained silent, though a vicious glint flickered deep within his eyes. At that moment, a faint green light flashed behind the fat man. A thin green thread appeared silently out of thin air, then instantly expanded into a massive green net that descended toward him. The entire process was completely noiseless. The fat man showed no sign of noticing, still observing the other man with a composed smile. The man's expression remained unchanged, but inwardly he was overjoyed. A translucent blue flying dagger quietly appeared in his sleeve, concealed from view. He was prepared to strike the moment the net trapped his opponent. However, just as the net descended to within several dozen feet of the fat man's head, the situation changed abruptly. A dull thump sounded. Brilliant spiritual light burst forth from the fat man's hair, forming a vast expanse of golden radiance that condensed into a massive golden hand which caught the descending net. Golden and green light intertwined, producing a series of sharp, crackling sounds. It's you, Old Devil Jin. As expected, you came as well, Old Devil Ming. Two voices rang out almost simultaneously from within the intertwined lights. One carried a note of surprise while the other was calm and assured. In the next instant, both the golden hand and the green net withdrew. The spiritual light receded, revealing a tiny green worm and a miniature humanoid figure no more than half a foot tall. The green worm was clearly an avatar belonging to the master of the man surnamed Wang. As for the humanoid figure, it wore golden Taoist robes with a small wooden sword strapped to its back. Its face was obscured by a hazy light, making its features indistinct, though it gave the impression of an elderly being. You are using a soul-splitting technique, the green worm said coldly. You have even dispatched the spiritual avatar meant to help you withstand your next heavenly tribulation. Are you not afraid something will go wrong, leaving you unable to survive it? Heh, that is not something you need to worry about. Fellow Taoist Ming, the miniature figure replied with a chuckle. Master Thousand Treasure was a renowned figure in his time. The treasures he carried were famous among both races. If I can obtain even 2 or 3 of them, my next tribulation will pose no threat. Besides, have you not also sent an avatar here? You know of Master Thousand Treasure as well, the green worm exclaimed. Meanwhile, the fat man and the man surnamed Wang stood respectfully to the side, not daring to interrupt. "There is no need for you to know how I learned of it," the humanoid figure continued. "But you may rest assured, only the two of us possess this knowledge. There is no third party aware of it. How about we join forces and secure the treasures together?" "Join forces?" the green worm replied coldly. "If you truly had reliable information, why would you need our help? Even if I lack the full details, it is enough to know that you do, is it not?" "You are threatening me." The green worm's tone turned icy. "I would not dare," the humanoid figure said, quickly shaking its head. "I merely propose cooperation. I will assist you in the search. Once the treasures are found, we divide them. This will also strengthen our relationship, a mutually beneficial outcome." "You—" The green worm was about to respond sharply when its expression suddenly changed. It turned toward a certain direction. "Someone is coming." The humanoid figure also looked in that direction, its expression darkening. "It seems the owner of this spirit land has returned," it said in a low voice. "You must decide quickly, fellow Taoist. If matters escalate and attract the attention of the old monsters of Deep Heaven City, all our efforts may be wasted. According to the rules, any treasures found here belong to the land's owner." The green worm's expression shifted several times before it finally sighed. "Very well. I will agree to cooperate for now. However, the treasures cannot be divided equally. The exact terms can be discussed elsewhere. We cannot remain here any longer. I heard that although the owner is only at the deity transformation stage, his spiritual sense is exceptionally strong. We must avoid detection. Haha, that is sufficient. Let us go." The humanoid figure nodded with satisfaction and reached out, summoning a small purple umbrella. With a gentle motion, the umbrella transformed into a sheet of purple light that enveloped both it and the fat man. In the next instant, they vanished from sight. The purple maple umbrella. The green worm hesitated briefly before speaking in a grim tone. "I did not expect him to bring such a powerful treasure. He truly came prepared. We should leave as well." It opened its mouth and produced a small 5-colored flag. The flag spun, releasing a cloud of 5-colored light that swept over both it and the man, surnamed Weng, then sank into the ground and disappeared. Silence returned as if nothing had occurred. Some time later, a streak of azure light shot in from the distance. Within it was a young man with ordinary features. This man was Han Li. The azure light circled above a shallow depression in the ground before fading, revealing Han Li suspended in mid-air. He surveyed the surroundings, a trace of puzzlement on his face. Moments earlier, he had sensed a faint fluctuation of spiritual qi here. Though it was extremely weak and fleeting, he was certain of it. Both the humanoid figure and the green worm had been spatial tempering cultivators, albeit in avatar form. After cultivating the Great Development Technique, Han Li's spiritual sense far exceeded that of ordinary deity transformation cultivators, nearing that of early spatial tempering experts. Thus, despite their swift actions, he had detected something unusual and rushed over at full speed, yet he had still arrived too late. He extended his spiritual sense, sweeping across a radius of several hundred kilometers. There was nothing. His expression darkened. After hovering in silence for a long time, Han Li suddenly let out a faint, cold chuckle and departed as a streak of azure light heading directly toward his cave abode. At this time, the green worm and the golden humanoid figure were already thousands of kilometers away, unaware that their presence had been detected. They were currently on a secluded mountain discussing the details of their cooperation. Upon returning to his cave abode, Han Li immediately activated all nearby restrictions before entering a refinement chamber. He remained inside for 3 days and nights. When he emerged, he carried an octagonal formation plate shimmering with silver light. In addition, his storage bracelet now contained countless jade beads, each no larger than a pea and varying in color. Each bead was smooth and inscribed with one or more silver runes in beveled script. These were treasures Han Li had devised himself, the myriad dragon beads, based on a talisman technique recorded in the half page of the Golden Jade Tome. They were not difficult to refine and possessed neither offensive nor defensive capabilities. However, they were highly effective as detection tools. Each bead could monitor an area spanning several dozen kilometers. Any fluctuation in spiritual qi within that range would be transmitted to Han Li, who could determine its approximate location through the formation plate, even from hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Naturally, such a surveillance system could not be established by casually burying the beads. They had to be arranged within a specific formation, with the formation plate serving as the core. Only then could the beads resonate with one another, forming a complete network. This required a large-scale formation. The size of the formation depended on the number of beads deployed. Under normal circumstances, monitoring an entire plot of spirit land would require an enormous expenditure of spirit stones. Even with Han Li's considerable wealth, maintaining such a formation continuously would deplete his entire supply of spirit stones within only a few years. Han Li had previously examined certain restrictions within Deep Heaven City that utilized beveled silver script. Through comparison, he discovered that although some of those restrictions possessed functions similar to his myriad dragon beads, none were as compact or as inconspicuous. Thus, despite the relatively simple refinement process, these treasures were genuinely unique. Naturally, this simplicity was only relative. Without the information recorded on that half-page of the Golden Jade tome, Han Li would not have been able to refine such items at all. During his time in the human world, Han Li had once considered refining a set of these beads. However, one of the key materials was no longer available there, forcing him to abandon the idea. Later, while passing through the marketplace of Setting Sun City, he happened to encounter that material by chance. It was not expensive, so he purchased all the necessary components to refine the beads. In retrospect, that decision had been correct. Now that he knew individuals were plotting within his spirit land, he could not remain idle. No matter what actions he intended to take, his immediate priority was surveillance. Han Li left his cave abode as a streak of azure light. Moving swiftly, he buried countless myriad dragon beads from his storage bracelet deep into the ground, arranging them according to a specific pattern centered around his cave residence. At his current speed, it took less than half a day to establish restrictions across nearly 2/3 of the entire spirit land. Afterward, he returned to his cave abode and set up a peculiar formation within one of the halls. At its center, he placed the octagonal formation plate. He embedded several dozen high-grade spirit stones into the surrounding ground, then formed a series of incantation seals to activate the formation. A low humming sound followed. White light began to emerge across the formation, and a layer of silver radiance appeared over the octagonal plate. Within that silver layer, specks of white light flickered continuously. Han Li nodded slightly satisfied before heading toward a secret chamber. He did not yet know the identity of those who had intruded upon his spirit land, but they were likely connected to the cultivator who had once competed with him over it. Without clear information, Han Li chose not to act rashly. Instead, he decided to observe from concealment. At the same time, he intended to study the mysterious lightning patterns and refine additional beveled silver talismans described in the Golden Jade tome fragment. He also needed to refine certain spirit medicines, including the clear jade pill. Entering the secret chamber, Han Li closed the door behind him. He walked to the center and sat down cross-legged. With a casual motion, he brushed his storage bracelet. A flash of azure light followed, and a jade slip, a golden handkerchief, and a bead appeared before him. He first infused his spiritual sense into the jade slip, carefully examining the lightning patterns within. Afterward, he picked up the golden handkerchief, contemplating briefly before tossing it into the air. Without hesitation, he opened his mouth and expelled a crimson fireball. The fireball struck the handkerchief precisely. Golden light flashed. The fireball was extinguished instantly, while the handkerchief remained completely unharmed. Han Li raised an eyebrow. He pointed a finger, sending a translucent ice spike toward it. The result was the same. The ice spike dissipated upon contact. A hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. Could this handkerchief be immune to the 5 elements? With that thought, he flicked his finger again, releasing a strand of golden sword qi. This time the handkerchief was cleanly cut in half. However, it immediately transformed into countless fine golden threads and vanished. Han Li frowned slightly. He nodded once, then shook his head. He shifted his attention to the golden bead in his hand. The lightning power contained within it felt extremely unstable. An hour later, a deafening explosion erupted from within the secret chamber. The chamber walls, despite being reinforced by multiple layers of restrictions, shattered instantly. Thick arcs of golden lightning surged violently through the air like countless serpents, filling the space with blinding brilliance. At that moment, a clear, ringing sound echoed from the center of the golden light. A small, ink-black mountain appeared, releasing rings of murky gray light. As the gray light spread, all the golden lightning arcs vanished. In their place, a golden lightning worm formed within the divine essence-fused light, struggling violently to escape. At the base of the mountain, Han Li sat cross-legged within a circular area, roughly 10 feet wide. That area remained completely intact, while everything beyond it had been devastated. It was as if he sat atop an isolated pillar within a massive crater. Han Li glanced at the small mountain and the lightning worm, then surveyed the surroundings. A trace of satisfaction appeared on his face. The lightning bead has amplified the power of the divine Devilbane lightning by more than tenfold. If I hadn't prepared the divine essence-fused light barrier in advance, even I would have been affected. If I can refine more of these beads, I won't need other treasures. Against cultivators of the same level, this alone would be sufficient. His eyes revealed a rare hint of excitement. However, when it came to lightning power, he possessed more than just divine Devilbane lightning. A thought arose. He opened his mouth and expelled a sphere of azure light. Within it floated a small, ancient cauldron, the Heaven Void Cauldron. Han Li placed a hand on his head. Murky grey light surged outward, enveloping the lightning worm and dragging it downward. The worm struggled, but it was completely unable to resist. With a point of his finger, the lid of the cauldron flew open with a buzzing sound. The grey light forced the lightning worm inside, then dissipated. Han Li waved his hand, retracting the small mountain into his body. The Heaven Void Cauldron, however, remained suspended above him. After briefly examining the damaged chamber, Han Li frowned. He summoned a massive ape puppet, nearly 20 feet tall, and injected a strand of spiritual sense into it, instructing it to repair the chamber. Then he moved to another secret chamber, with the Heaven Void Cauldron following behind. Inside, he sat down once more and beckoned the cauldron forward. It responded immediately, flying toward him. Brilliant azure light radiated from it as it expanded to roughly 10 feet in size. Han Li flicked his finger lightly. A dull clang echoed. Thunder roared within the cauldron as a sphere of silver lightning about the size of a human head released intense arcs of electricity. The cauldron trembled continuously, suggesting more lightning was stored within. This was the golden and silver heavenly lightning he had extracted during his minor heavenly tribulation. Its power rivaled that of divine Devilbane lightning, and he possessed a considerable amount. There was no shortage of material for refining additional lightning beads. Han Li took a slow breath. He extended all 10 fingers, directing them toward the lightning spheres as his immense spiritual sense surged outward. The silver lightning spheres broke apart into countless threads, accompanied by continuous thunder. Time passed. In what felt like an instant, half a month had gone by. On this day, the octagonal formation plate suddenly emitted a ringing sound. Brilliant silver light radiated from it, forming a floating screen of light in the air. The door of the secret chamber burst open. A streak of azure light shot out, arriving in the hall within moments. The light faded, revealing Han Li now dressed in robes of gold and silver. The robes were simple in design, but golden and silver runes shimmered across their surface, giving them a distinctive presence. With a calm expression, Han Li produced a set of azure robes and put them on, concealing the two-colored garment beneath. He stepped into the formation and looked at the silver light screen. At one corner of the screen, 4 colored points of light appeared. They were moving steadily toward the center. A cold glint flickered in Han Li's eyes as he continued observing. As the points drew closer to his cave abode, his expression gradually darkened. 2 hours later, the four lights halted approximately 1,000 kilometers away. They then separated and began moving in a seemingly aimless and uncertain pattern. Han Li stroked his chin, then suddenly waved his sleeve. More than a dozen fist-sized, gold-devouring beetles shot out, circling briefly before flying out of the hall. After one final glance at the screen, Han Li left and returned to the secret chamber. He removed his azure robes, revealing the two-colored garment again. Running his fingers along the hem, a faint smile appeared. This lightning robe had been refined, using nearly all the heavenly lightning within the Heaven Void Cauldron. It contained more than 10 types of lightning pattern runes. If activated together, they could unleash formidable power. It had become one of his new trump cards. As for the lightning beads, he had refined over a dozen. If used simultaneously, even a spatial tempering cultivator would likely be forced to retreat. Within a short period, his strength had increased significantly. After some thought, Han Li put his azure robes back on. He then retrieved a palm-sized white jade badge from his storage bracelet. It was the half-page of the Golden Jade Tome. The half-page recorded the refinement methods for several talismans. The High Zenith Invisibility Talisman that Han Li had once used. The 9 Palaces Heavenly Talisman that had inspired the creation of the Myriad Dragon Beads, and a puppet talisman known as the Armor Origin Talisman. There was also a 4th talisman, the Heavenly Halberd Talisman, which was the only one among them that possessed offensive capabilities. After experimenting with the High Zenith Invisibility Talisman, Han Li had already gained a basic grasp of its refinement method. Although the success rate remained extremely low, as long as he was willing to invest sufficient materials, he would eventually be able to refine it successfully. The 9 Palaces Heavenly Talisman was an immortal talisman designed to trap enemies. Even though Han Li had only obtained half of its refinement method, it had still been enough for him to develop the Myriad Dragon Beads. As for the remaining 2 talismans, Han Li had yet to understand them. However, while searching for ready-made shadow puppet talismans in the market of Deep Heaven City, he had inadvertently discovered a crucial detail regarding the Armor Origin Talisman. With his extensive knowledge of puppetry, it was likely that he would make progress in the future after further study. The final talisman, the Heavenly Halberd Talisman, was a metal attribute offensive talisman. According to the information recorded on the half-page of the Golden Jade Tome, once activated, the talisman could summon a heavenly halberd from the true immortal realm, capable of splitting the earth and parting the seas. However, the profundity of this talisman far exceeded Han Li's current comprehension at the deity transformation stage. Han Li gently stroked the jade badge as he considered the situation. Deep Heaven City housed countless high-grade cultivators, many of whom were stronger than him. Under such circumstances, it was only prudent to prepare as many trump cards as possible to ensure his survival. Unfortunately, he could not refine 3 of the 4 talismans. Even so, the High Zenith Invisibility Talisman alone was already sufficient to conceal him from spatial tempering cultivators. If he could refine a few of them, they would undoubtedly prove extremely useful. As for the other talismans, there was no need to rush. He could continue studying them later. With that thought, Han Li flicked his wrist. A burst of azure light erupted from his storage bracelet, sweeping downward before fading to reveal several brocade boxes, jade boxes of varying sizes, along with a few vials and gourds. He made a grasping motion, and one of the brocade boxes flew into his hand. Opening the lid, he revealed a piece of red hide from an unknown beast. The spiritual light shimmering across its surface indicated that it was no ordinary demonic material. Without hesitation, Han Li tossed the hide into the air and opened his mouth. A soft sputtering sound followed, and a ball of azure spiritual light enveloped the hide completely. He formed a hand seal, and the spiritual light abruptly transformed into blazing crimson flames. A peculiar scene unfolded. The hide was not consumed by the flames. Instead, the spiritual light it emitted grew increasingly brilliant, and its surface gradually became translucent. Hanli then pointed towards several jade vials. The vials opened on their own, releasing powders of various colors that shot into the flames. Crackling sounds echoed as the powders transformed into streams of multicolored spiritual light merging into the hide. The now transparent hide radiated dazzling light. Hanli continued forming hand seals, his eyes already closed. Aside from the occasional crackling of flames, the secret chamber remained silent. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, a deep rumbling explosion would sound within the chamber every few days. After more than 10 such occurrences, the chamber finally fell completely silent. Half a month later, the doors of the chamber opened. Hanli stepped out with a slight frown and immediately headed toward the hall. Faint spiritual light still lingered there. The silver screen and the 4 specks of light upon it had become dim and indistinct. Without delay, Hanli replaced the high-grade spirit stones in the formation and reactivated it. A sharp burst of silver light radiated from the octagonal formation plate, restoring clarity to the screen. Hanli's gaze darkened as he looked at the specks of light. The 4 specks that had previously separated had gathered together again, now only about 200 kilometers away from his cave abode. There were 2 reasons for his emergence. First, he had successfully refined a high-zenith invisibility talisman. Second, one of the gold-devouring beetles he had deployed for surveillance had disappeared. He could not determine whether it had been trapped or destroyed. Earlier, his second nascent soul, which had been refining spirit medicines in the cave, had reported that those specks of light had remained in the same location for several days. Had they already found what they were searching for? Hanli sat down cross-legged before the screen and observed it in silence. 3 days passed, yet the specks of light did not move. On the morning of the 4th day, Hanli let out a faint sigh and stood up. It seemed he had no choice but to investigate personally. Regardless of their intentions, if these people caused trouble within his spirit land, he would be the one to suffer the consequences. After all, for cultivators of their level, a distance of several hundred kilometers could be crossed almost instantly. With such individuals so close to him, it was impossible to cultivate with peace of mind. Thus, it was better to confirm the situation in person. If they had discovered something valuable, he would not hesitate to take it. Hanli had previously faced spatial tempering cultivators and was confident in his ability to escape, even if he could, not defeat them. Moreover, he had recently refined lightning robes, lightning beads, and a high-zenith invisibility talisman, further increasing his confidence. At the same time, those 4 individuals remained completely unaware that they were being monitored by the myriad dragon beads. It was also unlikely that any body integration cultivators were among them. With that in mind, Hanli rose into the air as a streak of azure light and left his cave abode. After exiting, he chanted softly, and his body gradually became transparent. Although this concealment technique was inferior to the high-zenith invisibility talisman, it was still difficult to detect unless examined closely with spiritual sense. It was sufficient for avoiding ordinary detection. In the next moment, he flew toward the location indicated on the screen. The distance was only several hundred kilometers. At his speed, it would not take long, but he deliberately slowed down, prioritizing stealth. Even so, he arrived in a short time. As he approached, Hanli silently descended. The spiritual light around him turned yellow as he burrowed into the ground, advancing with an earth movement technique. At the same time, he formed hand seals to completely conceal his aura. After traveling nearly 10 kilometers underground, Hanli suddenly stopped. His eyes narrowed slightly as he spoke without sound. Golden light flickered in the surrounding soil as several gold-devouring beetles emerged and flew into his sleeve. The strands of spiritual sense attached to them returned, and a thoughtful expression appeared on Hanli's face. So they are indeed searching for something. However, I didn't expect it to be in that location. Since they were able to detect and kill one of my gold-devouring beetles, there must be at least one spatial tempering cultivator among them, he murmured quietly, lowering his head in thought. After a moment, he waved his hand over his storage bracelet. A flash of light appeared, and a purple talisman emerged in his grasp. The talisman glowed brightly, covered in flashing silver runes. It was the High Zenith Invisibility Talisman he had just refined. Due to improved materials and refinement methods, this talisman was far superior to the previous one. Hanli knew that approaching further without being detected by a spatial tempering cultivator would be difficult. Although he was reluctant to use the talisman, he ultimately chose to do so. Remaining undetected was essential. The talisman was valuable, but it could not compare to his life. Moreover, this refined version was no longer a single-use item. It could be reused until its power was depleted. The purple talisman exploded, releasing countless silver runes that circled around him. Hanli formed several incantation seals with a focused expression. The runes transformed into clouds of silver mist, instantly enveloping him. Moments later, the mist dispersed and Hanli vanished completely. At that instant, he clearly sensed the difference between this talisman and the previous one. He could now freely use his treasures and a significant portion of his spiritual power. However, if he unleashed overly powerful techniques, the invisibility effect would be broken. Even so, he was already satisfied. At the very least, he could seize the initiative and strike first if necessary. Without hesitation, he continued forward. After advancing several more kilometers, his body slowly began to rise toward the surface. When Hanli reappeared soundlessly on the surface, he glanced around and found himself halfway up a bleak, barren rocky mountain. It was rather unusual that such desolation could exist in a place situated atop a spirit vein. When Hanli had previously surveyed his entire plot of spirit land, he had already noticed this location and considered it somewhat strange. So he had conducted a brief search of the surrounding area. However, he had discovered nothing at the time. As he had been focused on constructing his cave abode, he did not linger, and ultimately concluded that the sparse spiritual chi here was likely due to some natural anomaly. Although such situations were extremely rare on land above spirit veins, there were still precedents. Even so, Hanli had remained somewhat doubtful. He had planned to return for a more thorough inspection when time permitted. Now that these four individuals had remained nearby for several days, it was clear that something about this mountain was not ordinary. Hanli frowned slightly as he absorbed the information transmitted back by several strands of his spiritual sense. Then, with a gentle sway, he drifted upward toward the summit. His current body was light and insubstantial, almost like air itself. He soon arrived above the peak and hovered there completely motionless. Looking down, he saw nothing but the same rocky terrain as before. Everything appeared unchanged from his last visit. Hanli raised an eyebrow and extended his spiritual sense downward, but once again he found nothing unusual. After a brief pause of consideration, he formed a hand seal and channeled magic power into his eyes. A sharp blue light flickered deep within his pupils as he activated his bright sight spirit eyes to their full extent. All that was normally hidden from sight was revealed. This time he quickly detected something. Around the mountain, 8 faint pillars of light rose from the ground, forming a rectangular configuration that enveloped the entire summit. Hanli could not determine what type of treasure had produced these pillars, but the formation they created was entirely invisible and colorless, with no fluctuations of spiritual chi. It was no wonder that even his powerful spiritual sense had failed to detect it. It seemed likely that this temporary restriction had been set up by those 4 individuals. If not for the fact that Hanli had been continuously monitoring their movements, it would have been difficult for him to track them here or uncover this concealed formation. Although the restriction was extremely well hidden, its primary function was concealment, and it did not appear particularly formidable. With his current understanding of formations, Hanli quickly assessed its structure. He then formed another hand seal and descended into it without hesitation. A remarkable scene followed. As his insubstantial body made contact with the invisible barrier, the formation showed no reaction at all. He passed through it effortlessly and vanished into the summit. Clearly, in his current state, under the invisibility talisman, ordinary restrictions could not obstruct him. Hanli continued downward, burrowing more than 200 feet beneath the surface. At that point, a blue sphere of light appeared below him. It was only the size of a human head, yet within it a vortex slowly revolved. Hanli found this intriguing and cautiously approached to observe it more closely. To his surprise, as soon as he drew near the vortex within the blue sphere, seemed to sense his presence. A burst of brilliant seven-colored light erupted, and in an instant, Han Li was swept into the vortex. He was completely caught off guard and startled. After a brief attempt to resist, he realized that he could not break free from the immense force surrounding him. Before he could deploy any treasures or techniques, his surroundings blurred. In the next moment, he appeared in an entirely unfamiliar place, as if he had been instantly teleported. At the same time, his insubstantial body regained its solidity, becoming visible once more. A flash of purple light appeared on his chest, and a purple talisman materialized. Han Li immediately seized it, clasped his hands, and with a faint glow of spiritual light, the high zenith invisibility talisman vanished. There was no need to reactivate it. Two figures stood nearby, and they had already noticed him. Both were startled by his sudden appearance. After recognizing his features, one of them exclaimed, "How did you find this place?" The speaker was the cultivator surnamed Weng. Beside him stood the fat cultivator surnamed Jin, who also looked bewildered. In truth, if not for the insubstantial state granted by the talisman, even with Han Li's mastery of Vajra arts, being caught in that seven-colored light would likely have caused him to cough up several mouthfuls of blood essence. He was unaware of this. The seven-colored light bore some resemblance to Buddhist spiritual light, but its origin was entirely different. If an ordinary cultivator had been caught in it, not only would their magic power be suppressed, they would likely have been crushed by the overwhelming pressure. To bypass this restriction and enter this space, these two men and their masters had spent 3 days and nights exhausting their strength and treasures. Only then had they managed to force their way in. Seeing the two of them, Han Li felt slightly relieved. Since no spatial tempering cultivators were present, dealing with these two would not be difficult. Although his concealment had been broken, he merely smiled faintly and said, "I was wondering who set up the restriction outside. So it was the two of you. What business brings you here, fellow Taoists? If I recall correctly, the laws of Deep Heaven City prohibit outsiders from entering another's spirit land without permission. If there is a reason to visit, prior notice and approval are required. Otherwise, once reported to the heavenly guards, trespassers will be punished with the poisonous whip." His tone gradually grew colder. Although both intruders were deity transformation cultivators, they could not help but react slightly at the mention of such punishment. However, the fat cultivator quickly forced a smile. "Please don't misunderstand, fellow Taoist Han. Brother Weng and I were merely passing by. We rested on this mountain and somehow triggered the restriction which brought us here. We are also quite confused." "Oh, do you take me for a fool, Brother Jin?" Han Li replied with a faint smile, hands clasped behind his back. "If I'm not mistaken, there should be 2 more people here, correct?" By now he had already used his spiritual sense to examine his surroundings. He found himself within a peculiar space, roughly 1,000 feet in height and about half a kilometer across. It was not particularly large. 7-colored light drifted through the air, filling the entire area. High above 7 enormous spheres of light hovered like suns. Yet the white light they emitted felt cool rather than warm. At the center of each sphere was a 7-colored door of light, within which indistinct and murky scenes could be seen. Hearing Han Li's words, both men were visibly shaken. Their expressions darkened as they noticed his gaze directed toward the 7 light doors. "How do you know how many of us are here?" the fat cultivator asked coldly. "Oh, are you thinking of making a move?" Han Li said calmly. "Before coming here, I left behind several voice transmission talismans and arranged some restrictions. If anything happens to me, those talismans will be sent to Senior Zhao Wugui, as well as a few acquaintances. Trespassing on spirit land and attacking its owner without cause, both are serious offenses. I'm sure the enforcement squads would be interested. Combined, those crimes would not result in mere whipping. And do you really believe the two of you can kill me even together? You know Heavenly God Zhao? The cultivator surnamed Weng asked with suspicion. His companion also hesitated. Senior Zhao personally brought me to Deep Heaven City. Do you think I know him or not? Han Lai replied evenly. His composure made the two men uncertain. After a moment, the man surnamed Weng snorted. Since you already know there are others, I'll be direct. Our masters are also here deeper within the restriction. What can you do? You are only a deity transformation cultivator. Do you think anyone would offend two spatial tempering cultivators to avenge you? Even if you know Zhao Wugui, you are likely just an acquaintance. Is that so? Hanli chuckled softly. Then let us make a wager, fellow Taoist Weng. Before coming here, I anticipated your involvement, so I mentioned your name in my voice transmission talismans. With your cultivation, you should not fear the heavenly guard's soul-searching techniques, correct? The implication caused the man surnamed Weng to stiffen. The fat cultivator also felt uneasy. If one of them were captured, both would be implicated. If the matter reached the heavenly guards and the council of elders, the consequences would be severe. After a brief silence, the fat cultivator forced a laugh. Fellow Taoist Han is indeed reputed to be capable. With such a future ahead, surely you would not risk your life over this matter. Brother Weng and I are not the ones behind this. Perhaps you can discuss terms with our seniors when they return. So you believe I would not dare remain here? Hanli said calmly. Very well. I also wish to meet your seniors. I will wait. With a slight movement, he appeared in a corner and sat down cross-legged. He truly seemed prepared to wait for the two spatial tempering cultivators to return. The two intruders were clearly taken aback by what they saw. They exchanged a brief voice transmission in silence, then each moved to a separate corner and sat down cross-legged. Their reasoning was straightforward. They were not confident they could kill Han Li, and Han Li himself showed no intention of entering the seven-colored doors of light. In that case, it was better to wait and leave any complications for their seniors to handle. The space soon fell into complete silence. All three individuals either closed their eyes in meditation or quietly observed the doors of light. What the two intruders did not realize was that Han Li was actually somewhat tense. The voice transmission talismans and restrictions he had mentioned earlier did not exist at all. His original plan had been simple. If others obtained the treasures here, he would use his high zenith invisibility talisman to approach them unnoticed and seize the treasures. If he encountered opponents too powerful to handle, he would observe from concealment and act accordingly. However, the situation had not developed as expected. The strange seven-colored light had forced him into this space and had even broken the concealment of his talisman. He had no choice but to confront these cultivators directly. Fortunately, he had already considered several methods to make others wary of him, and he was currently employing one of them to pressure these two intruders. This was not because he feared them. The man surnamed Weng and the fat cultivator were at the mid and late deity transformation stages respectively. With Han Li's current abilities and treasures, he estimated that he had at least an 80% chance of killing them on the spot. Eliminating them would not be difficult, but the consequences would be troublesome. It would mean forming enmity with the two spatial tempering cultivators who had entered the doors of light. Hanli had no intention of sparing trespassers lightly, but he also did not wish to provoke such powerful enemies without necessity. Moreover, even if he succeeded in killing the two intruders, he might not be able to leave this mysterious place quickly. If that happened once the spatial tempering cultivators emerged, he would become their next target. Therefore, it was more prudent to first find a way out. With a clear path of retreat, he would have far more options. With that decision made, Hanli acted. Although his eyes remained closed, his powerful spiritual sense divided into countless strands and spread outward in all directions. He made no effort to conceal this action, so the two intruders immediately noticed. However, neither of them intervened. Instead, they sneered inwardly. As soon as a strand of his spiritual sense touched the seven-colored light on one of the walls, it was instantly drawn in and vanished. At the same time, a powerful suction force erupted, attempting to pull the rest of his spiritual sense out of his body. Hanli was startled and immediately activated his great development technique to counter the force. At the same time, he opened his eyes and looked at the swirling light on the wall, a trace of confusion in his gaze. He also noticed the faintly mocking expressions on the intruders' faces. It was clear that they were already aware of the peculiar properties of the seven-colored light and had deliberately chosen not to inform him. Although Han Li felt some irritation, his expression remained calm as he continued to consider his next move. It was unfortunate that the Crimson Soul Flag, the spatial spirit treasure he had refined, had been destroyed by spatial storms within the spatial node. Otherwise, it would likely have been useful in breaking through this barrier. In addition, his Law Destruction Eye also possessed strong spatial tearing capabilities. However, this place was highly unusual, and it was uncertain whether it could break through the barrier here, or how long it would take. Various thoughts passed rapidly through his mind before he settled on another approach. Since his spiritual sense could not penetrate the walls, he would attempt to find an exit using his bright sight spirit eyes. He immediately channeled spiritual power into his eyes, and a deep blue light emerged within his pupils. A full day and night passed. Hanley had once again closed his eyes and appeared to be in deep meditation. His earlier attempts had not revealed any viable means of escape. Above them, the seven doors of light remained completely still. The two intruders stared upward with grim expressions, occasionally glancing toward Han Li with caution. "Your two seniors have not come out after so long. Could they have encountered difficulties?" Han Li asked calmly without opening his eyes. "Rest assured, fellow Taoist Han. If something had happened to them, we would already know. Are you becoming impatient?" The man surnamed Weng replied, "It is good to hear that they are safe. As for patience, I have enough to—" Before Han Li could finish speaking, a clear ringing sound suddenly emerged from the seven spheres of light above. Immediately afterward, they began to emit astonishing spiritual pressure along with dazzling light. Both intruders were startled, and Han Li also opened his eyes to observe. But this was only the beginning. As the ringing intensified, the seven spheres rapidly expanded, growing to the size of wagon wheels in an instant while flickering erratically. Spatial fluctuations rippled outward from them, converging on the central door of light. An invisible force seemed to compress the door, causing it to twist and distort violently. The fat cultivator abruptly stood up and exclaimed, "This is bad." His companion's expression also changed drastically. Hanley frowned slightly. Not only were the spheres of light becoming unstable, but the walls and ground began to tremble. The seven-colored light showed signs of breaking apart. All signs indicated that this space was nearing collapse. Recognizing the danger, Han Li immediately stood up and placed a hand on his head. A burst of gray light emerged from the back of his head. He then flipped his hand and golden light flashed as three shimmering golden beads appeared. These were the lightning beads he had refined not long ago. At the same time, the two intruders also summoned several treasures. However, they had little confidence in escaping and could not hide their fear. Hanley paid them no attention. He prepared to use his Law Destruction Eye together with his divine essence-fused light and the lightning beads to break through the space and escape. At that moment, a thunderous boom erupted from within the doors of light above. Hanley paused instinctively. A flash of seven-colored light followed, and two streaks, one green and one golden, shot out from the central door. They streaked across the air before stopping, revealing a small green worm and a miniature humanoid figure. The green worm was missing one horn and many scales. The humanoid figure had disheveled hair, and a large portion of its golden robes was torn away. Both appeared to be fleeing in haste. "We must leave immediately. This is not the resting place of Master Thousand Treasure. A jade-bone humanoid devil was sealed here. We triggered an ancient restriction, and the devil has been released. This space will collapse at once, so who are you?" The miniature figure suddenly noticed Han Li and stopped mid-sentence. The fat cultivator was overjoyed to see his seniors return. His lips trembled as he quickly transmitted Han Li's identity. "Grandfather, he is that Han Brat, So he is the owner of this spirit land," the green worm said, its eyes flashing with killing intent. "Brother Ming, this is not the time for such matters. Our priority is to escape." Losing our avatars here would be too costly. Besides, he is an ascended cultivator. I have no desire to provoke those people, the miniature figure urged. Very well. We leave now. As long as we do not kill him ourselves, Zhao Wugai and the others cannot act against us. When this space collapses, he will perish along with the devil. It is a pity only my avatar is here. Otherwise, I would not fear it. Let us go, the green worm replied after a brief hesitation. We must hurry. This place will not hold much longer. Relieved, the miniature figure immediately formed hand seals while chanting. The wooden sword on its back trembled, then rose into the air, transforming into a massive sword of light nearly 10 feet long. At the same time, the green worm roared and expanded, becoming a massive creature over 100 feet in length amid wind and lightning. A single twisted horn protruded from its head, and purple lightning crackled across its body. Hanli did not know what they had discussed, but seeing the power of these two spatial tempering cultivators, his expression grew more serious. By now, the 7-colored light on the walls had completely vanished. The walls trembled violently and were severely distorted. The massive worm's body trembled as it lashed its tail and opened its mouth, releasing a pillar of azure light. At the same time, a strand of purple lightning, as thick as a large bowl, erupted from its remaining horn. The two forces merged into one and shot directly toward a nearby wall. At the same moment, the miniature humanoid figure placed a hand atop its head. A pillar of golden light surged upward, vanishing into the giant sword hovering above. A clear, ringing sound echoed from the sword. In an instant, it expanded to nearly twice its size and began to radiate a sharp, golden brilliance, dazzling like the sun. Meanwhile, the miniature humanoid figure shrank further after releasing that energy. However, it paid no attention to the changes in its body and calmly formed a hand seal. The enormous sword shot forward as a streak of golden light, closely following the azure pillar. Both attacks converged on the same point on the wall. A thunderous explosion followed. Azure and golden light intertwined, forming a massive sphere of light several dozen feet wide, with countless arcs of purple lightning flickering across its surface. Under the control of the two spatial tempering cultivators, the sphere slowly sank into the wall. It appeared unstoppable, as if it would forcibly tear open the spatial barrier. Both the worm and the miniature humanoid figure were clearly pleased. The worm called out to the man surnamed Weng, then reverted to its original size. It swept him up in a streak of green light and rushed toward the massive sphere. As he was carried away, the man with the Weng surname cast a cold glance at Han Li. Han Li stood still, with a calm expression, making no move to save himself. The worm glanced at him as though looking at a dead man. It let out a long roar before vanishing into the sphere of light. It had no concern that Han Li might attempt to escape through the same opening. This sphere contained the combined essential power of both it and the miniature humanoid figure. Without their guidance, no one could pass through it. The miniature humanoid figure also transformed into a streak of golden light, sweeping up the fat man as it flew toward the sphere. At that moment, a dull thunderclap sounded nearby. Spatial fluctuations rippled, and a winged humanoid figure appeared. With a flick of his sleeve, a wave of grey light surged toward the golden light. The miniature humanoid figure suddenly felt a pulling force emerge from nowhere. Before it could react, another figure had already attached itself to its body. "Since you have a way out, I assume you won't mind taking me along," Senior, a calm voice said. The speaker was Han Li. The miniature humanoid figure paused slightly and turned toward the spot where Han Li had been standing. There another Han Li remained. That figure smiled faintly before dissolving into a green talisman that vanished instantly. It was the spirit-form talisman Han Li had cultivated for many years. From the moment the two spatial tempering cultivators began breaking the spatial barrier, Han Li had already devised his plan. He transformed the talisman into his own likeness as a decoy, while secretly approaching the sphere using his thunderstorm wings. Because the talisman had been nurtured for centuries and possessed traits similar to a tribulation avatar, the two cultivators failed to detect anything unusual in their haste. Taking advantage of this, Han Li used his divine essence-fused light to adhere himself to the miniature humanoid figure like a shadow. Are you courting death? The miniature humanoid figure quickly recovered from its shock and understood Han Li's intention. It halted mid-air and unleashed countless streaks of golden light toward him. To its surprise, the attacks only caused the grey light surrounding Han Li to tremble violently. They could not penetrate or disperse it. Han Li let out a faint chuckle from within the grey light. If your true body were here, I would not be able to resist. But as an avatar, you cannot break my divine essence-fused light in a short time. Do you really wish to remain here with me, senior? You dare threaten me? The miniature humanoid figure flew into a rage. Just as it prepared another attack, a sharp, eerie shriek echoed from above. Upon hearing it, Han Li felt his body heat surge as his blood rushed to the surface. However, having mastered the Vajra arts, his body was as resilient as a top-grade treasure. By activating the technique, he suppressed the discomfort. The miniature humanoid figure's expression changed drastically. Even though the fat man was protected by golden light, his face turned red and his body began to sway. It's the blood-weeping technique. The miniature humanoid figure immediately waved its hand, sending a beam of golden light into the fat man's body. The man shuddered, and his complexion gradually returned to normal. At the same time, a massive bone claw emerged from one of the distorted doors of light, attempting to force it open. The claw was jade white and radiated immense spiritual pressure. The earlier shriek had clearly come from within that door. Suppressing his surprise, Han Li spoke calmly. It seems the jade-bone humanoid devil will appear soon. If the one who escaped earlier destroys this passage to prevent its escape, we will all perish here. Are you not concerned, senior? The miniature humanoid figure's expression had already darkened at the sight of the claw. Han Li's words made it even more grim. Old Devil Ming was indeed ruthless enough to do such a thing. At that moment, a second bone claw emerged. The two claws gripped the door from both sides. The shriek ceased, replaced by a deep, thunderous roar. The creature was about to break through. You made the correct choice this time, brat. I will take you out of here, the miniature humanoid figure said without hesitation. Han Li felt a quiet sense of relief. The grey light around the figure loosened slightly. Brilliant golden light surged outward, enveloping most of the grey light before plunging into the sphere, carrying Han Li along. Han Li simply maintained his divine essence-fused light for protection and allowed the figure to proceed. Inside the sphere, he felt as though he had entered a world of dazzling brilliance. A wave of dizziness followed, and in the next instant, he found himself in the air above a mountain. Nearby floated a massive sphere of light. Only half of it was visible. The other half remained within the strange space they had escaped. Not far away, the green worm and its disciple hovered in mid-air, both stunned to see Han Li had also escaped. Han Li immediately spread his thunderstorm wings and vanished as a streak of azure and white lightning. In the next moment, he reappeared several hundred feet away. The miniature humanoid figure made no attempt to stop him, allowing him to create distance. The small green worm watched coldly, a sinister glint flashing in its eyes as it prepared to attack. At that instant, violent spatial fluctuations erupted from within the half-sphere of light. A roaring sound like a raging tsunami filled the air as a section of the sky crumpled inward. Not good. A spatial storm. Everyone present, including Han Li, reacted with alarm. Without hesitation, they abandoned all other concerns and fled in different directions, each using their own movement techniques. Teleportation would have been faster, but attempting to traverse space within a spatial storm was equivalent to seeking death. Fortunately, all present had formidable cultivation. Even with ordinary movement techniques, they covered several thousand feet in moments. A muffled sound followed as countless thin black cracks appeared across the distorted sky. These cracks rapidly spread, filling an area over 1,000 feet wide. The roaring intensified. The cracks shattered and liquid-like white light began to seep out wildly. A strange phenomenon unfolded. As soon as the white light emerged, violent winds surged forth, pulling in everything nearby. These winds resembled devouring beasts. Anything caught within them was instantly torn apart or vanished. Within the storm, eerie cries echoed continuously. At this point, Han Li had already retreated to the peak of a small mountain nearly 10 kilometers away. He observed the scene from a distance, his expression steady. This spatial storm was far weaker than those within the spatial node, yet he had no intention of being caught in it. Back then, it had only been with the Ice Phoenix's spatial abilities that he had survived those storms. Even so, most of his treasures had been destroyed, and he had nearly perished. Now the storm before him was still growing stronger with no sign of subsiding. After a brief period of consideration, Han Li turned into a streak of azure light and flew toward his cave abode, leaving the others behind. The green worm naturally sensed what Han Li was doing. Its brows furrowed, and it suddenly asked its disciple several questions. After hearing the answers, the green worm's expression darkened further. At that moment, a swath of golden light approached from another direction, arriving beside the green worm after a few flashes. The light receded, revealing the fat man along with a miniature humanoid figure hovering calmly above his head. "Brother Ming, are you truly going to let that brat go? If he reports what we were doing here to the heavenly guards, it could cause us some trouble," the miniature figure asked. "It would only be a minor inconvenience, as you said. Why should I expend effort to eliminate such a small issue? Searching for treasures on another's spirit land is not a serious matter. We only kept it secret due to Master Thousand Treasure's reputation. Moreover, we found nothing. There is no real consequence. Unless there is a conflict of interest, I have no intention of making enemies of those ascended cultivators. I also heard from my disciple that this brat is acquainted with Zhao Wugui. Heavenly Guard Zhao is nothing significant, but his master Lei Luo the Enlightened sits among the elders. Hehe. If you insist on killing the brat, I can assist you, the green worm said coldly. I bear no grudge against him. Why would I do that? Since there are no treasures here, I will take my leave. I will visit you again when I have time, the miniature figure replied with a faint chuckle. He cupped his fist in farewell, then transformed into a streak of golden light, taking the fat man with him and vanishing into the distance without even glancing at the spatial storm. That old bastard was clearly deceived by that brat and forced to take him along. Now he wants me to kill the brat and serve as his tool. Does he think I am so easily manipulated? The green worm scoffed. Let's go. A spatial storm has appeared here. Deep Heaven City's enforcement squad will surely take notice. Although they cannot arrive quickly, there may be heavenly guards nearby. Encountering them would be troublesome. Not only did we fail to obtain any treasure, but this avatar of mine has also been damaged. Truly unfortunate. With that, the worm's body elongated and transformed into a streak of green light, flying off in another direction. His disciple followed closely as a streak of blue light. After both streaks vanished, the area fell silent once more, save for the distant rumbling of the spatial storm. Meanwhile, Han Li stood within the hall of his cave abode, arms crossed as he observed the silver light screen before him. After confirming that the two spatial tempering cultivators had indeed left his spirit land, he let out a long breath. Now only a large yellow speck of light flickered erratically on the screen. That speck was none other than the spatial storm detected by the myriad dragon beads. Unlike Old Devil Ming and the others, Han Li could not simply leave. He had to remain and monitor the storm to ensure it did not destroy his spirit land. Fortunately, from his experience passing through spatial nodes, he knew such storms typically did not last long. As expected, after about 2 hours, the yellow speck began to dim. 15 minutes later, it disappeared completely. Han Li exhaled in relief. He cast one final glance at the screen. Just as he was about to deactivate the formation that consumed a large number of spirit stones, something caught his attention and his expression changed. At the location where the yellow speck had vanished, a small grey speck had appeared. It was far smaller and extremely faint, as though it might vanish at any moment. Yet as soon as it appeared, it began moving in a certain direction. Han Li was startled. He could not ignore it. Could a fragment of that devil's soul have escaped the spatial storm? He did not know the true nature of the jade-bone humanoid devil, but the fact that even spatial tempering cultivators had fled from it was enough to show its danger. If it remained nearby, it would become a serious problem. From the grey speck, he sensed extremely weak spiritual pressure. It appeared heavily injured and should not be difficult to eliminate. Having reached a decision, Han Li rose and departed his cave abode as a streak of azure light, heading directly toward the site where the storm had vanished. Moments later, he arrived above the location. The storm was indeed gone. The small mountain had also disappeared, replaced by a massive crater over 1,000 feet wide. Han Li circled the crater several times, but found nothing unusual. Frowning, he stopped mid-air and closed his eyes. He released his powerful spiritual sense, comparable to that of a spatial tempering cultivator, covering a radius of over 500 kilometers and carefully scanning every inch. After a short time, he abruptly opened his eyes, a strange expression appearing on his face. After brief consideration, he let out a long cry. Azure light erupted from his body as he shot off in a specific direction. After traveling nearly 200 kilometers, he stopped above a dense forest. The light receded, revealing Han Li standing in mid-air with his hands behind his back. Blue light flickered in his eyes as he looked downward. Suddenly, he gave a cold snort and grasped downward with one hand. An azure hand of light appeared beneath him, reaching toward a spot in the forest. Though only about 10 feet in size, it covered an area of over 100 feet below, emitting sharp, ringing sounds and creating an imposing presence. A streak of grey light suddenly shot out from the forest, fleeing in another direction. Han Li had anticipated this. He raised his other hand and flicked his fingers. 5 red threads shot out instantly and vanished into space. In the next moment, they reappeared, wrapping tightly around the grey light. The grey light expanded and contracted violently, attempting to escape. However, Han Li had already formed a hand seal. Crimson flames erupted from the threads, completely engulfing it. A faint, pained cry echoed from within. The grey light, already weak, was quickly destroyed by the flames, revealing a pristine white object. Han Li raised an eyebrow and waved his hand. The flames dissipated, and the object was drawn into his grasp. Upon inspection, it was a white skeletal hand with faint golden runes shimmering across its surface. At a glance, Han Li recognized it as one of the jade-bone humanoid devil's hands, though now reduced to normal size. Using both his spiritual sense and bright-sight spirit eyes, he examined it carefully. His spiritual sense indicated it was a powerful treasure. His spirit eyes confirmed it was indeed a human skeletal hand. It was a refined treasure made from human bone. The grey light attached to it had been a trace of spiritual essence, now completely eradicated by his fire spirit threads. The treasure was now inert. Most importantly, within the thumb of the skeletal hand was a small white jade badge about an inch in size. Silver light shimmered across its surface with numerous engraved runes in beveled silver script. Han Li quickly determined that this was one of the 72 outer pages of the Golden Jade Tome. Moreover, it was a complete page, unlike the half page he already possessed. A brief examination suggested it contained information related to artifact refinement. Though his expression remained calm, Han Li felt a surge of satisfaction. However, this was not the time to study it. Spiritual light flickered as he placed several restriction talismans onto the skeletal hand. He then sealed it within a jade box and immediately departed, returning to his cave abode. Unbeknownst to him, this decision proved highly prudent. Shortly after he left, a formation suddenly appeared above the site of the storm. Brilliant white light flashed and a golden ark emerged. On the ark stood 2 heavenly guards clad in golden armor. One was a middle-aged man with thick brows and a cloth crown, while the other was a slender, beautiful female cultivator with delicate features. This is the location indicated by the all-encompassing disk. Judging from the residual fluctuations, the spatial storm was small, likely a rare natural occurrence. Indeed, it seems to have been minor and short-lived. Otherwise, that mountain would not have been the only thing destroyed, the male cultivator replied, scanning the area with his spiritual sense. The female cultivator frowned slightly and said, "However, the space here had always been stable before." There were no signs of any disturbance. How could a spatial storm suddenly emerge? Who is the cultivator residing nearby? The man stroked his beard and replied calmly, "There is nothing unusual about it. Minor spatial fluctuations are inherently difficult to predict. Even something like the Gold Court boat cannot foresee everything. As for the owner of this area, the land was recently acquired by a deity transformation cultivator. He should be a dark azure god." The woman held a shimmering spell plate and adjusted it briefly. After a moment she frowned and said, "The foreign spirit plate has not detected the aura of any foreign tribes. It appears no one is hiding here. Should we summon the nearby dark azure guard and question him? He may be connected to this spatial storm." The cultivator shook his head, his expression turning serious. "There is no need to complicate matters. As long as no foreign being is present, it does not concern us, even if the storm seems unusual. Do not forget we have other duties. The yin-yang plate has already indicated that a large-scale spatial storm will occur elsewhere." After a brief hesitation, the woman let out a light laugh and nodded. "Brother Ma is correct. I was overly focused on this matter. Let us leave." The man nodded in satisfaction and transformed into a streak of yellow light flying back toward the Gold Court boat. The woman glanced around once more before boarding the vessel. A moment later, the Gold Court boat blurred and disappeared. A teleportation formation briefly flashed beneath it before dispersing into nothingness. Unaware within his cave residence, Hanley had already been examined by 2 spatial tempering heaven guards in a very short time. They had even departed without attempting to question him. Out of caution, once the cave residence returned to normal, he immediately sealed it and temporarily stopped monitoring all of his myriad dragon beads, preventing any expert from detecting their presence. Afterward, he went straight into his secluded chamber and began studying the bone hand he had obtained. Although the bone hand appeared unusual, as if refined through a method unfamiliar to him, Hanley did not dwell on that aspect. Instead, he opened his mouth and spat out a small golden sword only a few inches long. The sword trembled slightly, and fine strands of golden lightning coiled around the bone hand. The thumb of the hand was silently split apart. An inch-long jade badge emerged from within. It trembled briefly before flying out on its own. Hanley had already anticipated this. With a simple motion, he reached out and activated an invisible restriction, firmly trapping it in his grasp. Holding the pure white jade badge, his blue eyes flickered as he carefully examined it. Silver rune characters were inscribed on the badge. They reminded him of his earliest encounters with the Tao of tool refinement. The knowledge they contained contradicted much of his previous understanding, immediately capturing his interest. However, these silver runes were very different from ordinary ancient script. Without his prior study of the half-page, he would not have been able to comprehend anything related to true spirit runes. Because of this, Han Li promptly entered seclusion with the outer page of the Jade Book. After 3 days of focused study, he gained a general understanding. In addition to a detailed explanation of tool refinement techniques, the main content described a method known as the 100 Meridian Refinement Mantra. This technique used the cultivator's meridians, flesh and bones, as a foundation, refining them into various magic treasures with unimaginable abilities. If not for the knowledge he had gained from the half-page, Han Li would have dismissed it as absurd. Furthermore, the tool refinement section preceding it provided him with new insights, increasing his confidence in the method. From the bone hand he had acquired, it was evident that it was a product of this technique. Otherwise, how could a mere bone hand escape a spatial storm on its own? According to the Jade Book, one could either refine the entire body at once or cultivate it gradually. Regardless of the approach, the final result would be the complete transformation of the body into a Buddhist impervious Vajra body. Once this secret technique was fully mastered, regardless of cultivation level, one's limbs would possess overwhelming power and the body would approach near indestructibility. Although the Jade Book described the completion of this technique in only a few simple lines, Hanley could perceive its deeper implications and his expression turned slightly cold. Even if the description was exaggerated, the potential power was still formidable. Naturally, such a method demanded extremely harsh conditions. To begin cultivating it, one needed a body like Han Li's, which had fully completed the Vajra arts. To continue further and achieve the described effects, the body would need to be strengthened even more. If cultivation continued without sufficient physical endurance, the body would collapse. After all, refining one's body into treasure was an extreme method bordering on heretical. As he held the jade pendant, Han Li remained silent for a long time, deep in thought. Finally, he sighed softly and said, "It seems I no longer need to search for other techniques. I must choose a dual cultivation method." The appearance of the 100 Meridian Refinement mantra would push his body to its limits. Previously hesitant, he now made his decision. He would use the revised human and demon techniques to cultivate both body and magic simultaneously. He placed a restriction talisman on the jade page and stored it away. Then he took out a faint red jade slip. When he had obtained Manhuzi's heaven-bearing devil arts, he had copied them entirely onto this slip. After neglecting it for so long, he had nearly forgotten about it. Since this technique is divided into 3 unique parts, I may as well name it the Provenance True Devil Arts. As Han Li swept his spiritual sense over the jade slip, he murmured softly. Then he placed it against his forehead, closed his eyes, and began to carefully comprehend the technique. During his previous time in Deep Heaven City's stone pagoda, he had already attempted to cultivate this devil art. However, without medicinal assistance, he had achieved little progress. Thus, over the following months, Han Li spent most of his time in seclusion. Occasionally, he tended to his spirit medicines and began refining clear jade pills. This pill was indeed suitable for the deity transformation stage. After consuming a large amount of spirit materials and making numerous attempts, he managed to produce only 3 bottles. Han Li was not particularly concerned about this outcome. With more practice, his proficiency would improve. Given enough time, his success rate would naturally increase. The amount he had refined was already sufficient for his cultivation. Of course, while cultivating the heaven-bearing devil arts, he also spent time studying the 100 Meridian Refinement mantra. In this way, the rest period passed quickly. During this time, no one came to disturb him. It seemed that without any clear benefit, the spatial tempering cultivators had no reason to trouble him. Han Li was satisfied with this. As the half-year rest period neared its end, an azure streak shot out from the dense miasma, circled briefly in the air, and flew back toward Deep Heaven City. He still needed to complete a 3-month patrol assignment before returning to continue cultivation. 3 months later, Han Li returned without incident. He immediately went back to his cave residence and entered seclusion once more. After another half-year of cultivation, he emerged again. Time passed steadily like this, and before long 60 years had gone by. For cultivators, such a span was not particularly significant. However, during this time, an undercurrent began to form within the spirit realm. The higher levels of various clans frequently gathered to discuss matters. Though they were usually well-informed and capable of anticipating disasters, they still grew cautious and began making preparations. As the foremost stronghold of the human and demon races, Deep Heaven City could sense these subtle changes. Even the cultivators on patrol outside could feel the shift. One day, above a swamp, a group of cultivators flew slowly forward. An old man with a short beard, dressed in azure armor, led the group. Behind him were 10 black-armored cultivators. Whether it was the old man or the guards, all of them wore grave expressions. Holding foreign spirit plates, they constantly scanned their surroundings as if expecting an attack at any moment. After flying cautiously for 2 hours without incident, one of the plates suddenly emitted a low humming sound. Although the sound was faint, everyone immediately turned toward it in shock. A large, fierce-looking man stared at the white light shining from his companion's plate and shouted, "Another foreign being has been detected. This is happening too often. What are they planning? Do their spies no longer fear death, daring to enter our territory? We already lost 2 members in the last encounter." A middle-aged woman snorted coldly and replied, "We are already fortunate. Half a year ago, the 4th squad encountered a member of the Cave Hollow tribe. Most of them were killed, including their captain. The old man in azure armor frowned and spoke in a firm tone. Since the foreign spirit plate has already issued a warning, we must investigate. Otherwise, we will be punished upon our return. Most foreign beings are not particularly strong. As long as we proceed cautiously, this matter should be handled without difficulty. With their deity transformation stage captain having spoken, the rest of the squad remained silent, even if some felt reluctant. Shortly after the old man issued a series of orders, the squad immediately divided into several smaller groups and moved in the direction indicated by the foreign spirit plate. The group of cultivators adjusted their course and flew tens of kilometers. They soon arrived at an unremarkable pile of stones, beside which a swamp was shrouded in faint purple miasma. The old man glanced at the foreign spirit plate in his hand and nodded. Then he waved his hand and said, "It should be here. We cannot allow it to escape." At once, the black-armored guards released their defensive treasures and extended their spiritual sense downward. After the time it takes to finish a cup of tea, subtle changes appeared in the cultivators' expressions. They are nearby, but our spiritual sense cannot detect them. It seems we must search in person. The old man drew a breath and called out, "Fellow Taoist Chin, understood squad leader." "I know what to do," the narrow-eyed, middle-aged man replied without hesitation. He tapped the storage bracelet on his wrist and took out a pile of jet-black spheres. He raised his hand and scattered the spheres below, chanting under his breath. Cracking sounds followed as blue lightning flickered across the surfaces of the spheres. In an instant, they transformed into fist-sized metallic bees. Their bodies were black, and their wings vibrated with a constant buzzing sound. The others remained suspended in the air, unmoving. Only the middle-aged man sat cross-legged mid-air, forming incantation seals with both hands, controlling over 100 of these iron bees. It was evident that these patrolling cultivators had learned from past encounters and avoided recklessly descending to the ground, where they might become entangled with foreign beings in chaotic close combat. Given the strange and unblockable methods of foreign beings, such recklessness could easily result in mutual destruction. Using puppets for reconnaissance was a safer approach. However, just as the iron bees were released, the foreign spirit plates suddenly trembled and emitted a sharp, piercing shriek. Several of the plates even burst into blinding light, shocking their holders. The large, fierce-looking man glanced at his plate and shouted, "Not good. The foreign being is close. It has already entered within 100 meters." The others quickly checked their own plates and were thrown into confusion, their eyes widening as they scanned their surroundings. Within a 300-meter radius above and below, there was nothing. The area appeared completely empty. Everyone quickly break its concealment. "If it gets any closer, it will be too late," the old man shouted. His voice rang sharply in the ears of his subordinates. He then flipped his hand and produced a copper mirror. He tossed the mirror above his head, where it transformed into a bright moon. Light flickered across its surface as an azure beam the size of a bowl shot out, circling once before scattering in all directions. The others also released their own treasures, attempting to reveal the hidden enemy. Yet the light revealed nothing. Meanwhile, the shriek of the foreign spirit plates only grew sharper, indicating the presence was already extremely close. At this moment, panic began to surface among the cultivators, and the old man's face turned pale. This situation clearly indicated that the foreign being or beings were scouts of a powerful foreign tribe, not something they should confront. Yet instead of retreating, it had chosen to attack. Forcing his voice out, the old man shouted, "Quickly deploy the elemental spirit light formation. Ordinary defenses will not be enough." He immediately ignored the mirror above him and produced a red command token. He threw it into the air, where it transformed into a flickering ball of red light. The other black-armored guards came to their senses and released various magic tools. But at that moment, their movement slowed. A loud bang sounded as 3 foreign spirit plates exploded simultaneously. Above the 3 cultivators holding those plates, several faint blurs suddenly appeared. These silhouettes flickered and in an instant rushed toward the cultivators. "Ah, The three black-armored cultivators finally noticed the grey shadows and cried out. However, neither their magic treasures nor their protective spirit light could prevent the blurs from entering their bodies. They immediately screamed in pain and fell from the air, clutching their heads. Whether they survived was unclear. The old man's expression changed drastically upon seeing the blurs, and he shouted, "They are shadow puppets of the Shadow Tribe. Quickly use lightning-attributed treasures and techniques." He opened his mouth and spat out a silver-white flying sword. The moment it appeared, it enveloped him in silver-white lightning. A grey shadow emerged directly behind him, but with a thunderous crack. Lightning erupted and sent the shadow flying 10 meters away. The Shadow Tribe was infamous, and the cultivators quickly understood the danger. However, only 2 of them possessed lightning-attributed treasures. The others felt a chill run through their bodies and could not help but curse inwardly. Lightning was a rare and domineering attribute. Few cultivators possessed such tools. The Shadow Tribe was equally peculiar. Aside from lightning and a few specialized techniques, most methods had little effect on them. During this brief hesitation, more grey shadows appeared beneath them. The black-armored guards exchanged fearful glances and scattered in all directions, attempting to shake off the pursuing shadows. Yet the grey shadows clung to them like their own shadows, transforming into streaks of grey light and relentlessly chasing after them. In the blink of an eye, both cultivators and shadow puppets had moved 100 meters away. Only the old man and the 2 guards with lightning treasures remained at the original location. Even so, more grey shadows began to appear around them. There were now 8 drifting nearby, though the surrounding lightning still kept them at bay. These shadows showed no sign of pain and continued pressing forward. The old man drew a deep breath, no longer concerning himself with the others. His wrist flashed red as he produced a stack of talismans. "Evil creatures, you are seeking death." His gaze turned cold as he approached one of the shadows. With a swift motion, he activated a talisman. It crackled sharply, releasing over a dozen arcs of blue lightning toward the grey shadow. Thunder roared as lightning exploded outward. The shadow emitted faint cries as it was enveloped in a net of lightning and reduced to nothing. The old man felt a trace of relief. The high cost of these lightning talismans seemed justified. Without hesitation, he took out another stack and launched another attack. But just as the lightning was about to strike another shadow, a cold snort echoed from all directions. At the same moment, the grey shadow extended a large green hand from its front. Its fingers blurred as it grasped all the incoming lightning. After a series of muffled explosions, the lightning vanished completely. A green shadow. The old man's pupils contracted sharply. "You are all courting death." A cold, emotionless voice came from the green hand. It twisted and reshaped, forming a humanoid figure of green light. The figure resembled a person, but its head was abnormally large, 2 to 3 times that of a normal human. Green light flickered across its face, revealing a pair of bright scarlet eyes. As expected, it was a high-grade member of the Shadow Tribe. The old man's lips tightened and his face turned ashen. Although lightning was effective against most Shadow Tribe beings, green shadows were comparable to deity transformation cultivators and possessed partial resistance to lightning. In such confrontations, cultivators often met defeat or death. Judging from the number of shadow puppets under its control, this green shadow was likely among the strongest of its kind. The old man's heart sank completely. From afar, sounds of explosions echoed. It was clear the other black-armored cultivators had already fallen into desperate combat. The green shadow paid no attention to the old man's fear. It stepped forward, its body distorting as it instantly appeared only a few meters away. It raised its arm toward the lightning surrounding the old man. It intended to seize the magic treasure directly. The old man's heart jolted. The speed was too great. There was no time to evade. He could only shout and pour all his magic power into his defensive treasure. The silver lightning surged, becoming 3 times thicker. A trace of disdain flashed in the green shadow's crimson eyes as its hand continued forward, grasping the lightning. Thunder roared as the thick lightning violently dispersed, revealing a small sword within. The sword trembled violently, constantly shifting, yet the green hand held it firmly. The old man's face turned completely pale. The green shadow let out a strange, low laugh, its body flickering as if preparing to strike. At that moment, thunder suddenly sounded above the old man. Azure white light flashed and a winged silhouette appeared. As soon as the figure emerged, it silently pointed downward. He flicked his fingers, and 5 dense bolts of lightning shot forth. At the same time, a flash of light emerged from his hand, producing a square embroidered cloth that drifted slowly downward. Its surface glowed faintly, inscribed with strange talismanic characters that exuded a mysterious aura. When the green shadow saw this, it was alarmed but not afraid. It merely shook its shoulder, summoning 2 grey shadows from its back. In a blur, the 2 shadows split apart, moving to intercept the incoming lightning and the descending cloth. The green shadow then twisted its body, attempting to widen the distance between them. At that moment, a cold snort sounded from the winged silhouette above. What followed was beyond expectation. As soon as the green shadow heard the sound, its body trembled violently. Its movements abruptly halted, and it fell into a dazed state. A thunderous roar echoed as the 5 bolts of golden lightning struck first. Upon contact, the grey shadow puppet dissolved instantly under the golden light, like ice meeting the sun, leaving behind only a faint grey mist. At the same time, the talismanic characters on the embroidered cloth lit up and burst apart. Countless fine silver threads spread out, covering the grey shadow before retracting, pulling it into the cloth and binding it firmly in place. Thunder resounded from within the cloth as arcs of lightning surged outward, striking the immobilized shadow puppet without pause. At that instant, the winged silhouette flapped its wings and vanished in a streak of silver light. In the next moment, the silver streak appeared directly above the green shadow. The winged figure raised a hand and made a casual motion. Light shimmered in his palm. Soon after, radiance gathered at his fingertips, releasing 5 bone rings of different colors. Each ring was smooth like jade, its surface intricately carved with tiny skulls no larger than peas. The skulls' eyes flickered, and their mouths opened as if alive. From the 5 skulls, differently colored glacial flames were released. They fused together, forming a brilliant barrier of rainbow-colored fire. Just as the green shadow regained some composure, it saw flames igniting before it, threatening to engulf it entirely. Its entire body tensed, and its movements became extremely sluggish. In the next instant, a deep sense of terror arose within it. However, as a high-grade existence of the Shadow Tribe, it reacted immediately. It let out a sharp, piercing shriek, and its green body exploded into countless fine green threads. These threads scattered in all directions, attempting to evade the encroaching rainbow flames. The winged silhouette appeared to have anticipated this. Without hesitation, he brought down his other hand. Light gathered once more, and the faint image of a small black mountain appeared in his palm. With a flip of his hand, rings of grey light surged outward. As the grey light spread, the scattered green threads encountered their match. Wherever the grey rings passed, the threads were swept within them, instantly crushed into green dust. At that moment, the crimson eyes within the green shadow were filled with fear. Yet immense pressure bore down upon it, as if the very earth itself was pressing against its body. Under such overwhelming force, it was unable to escape. A violent wind rose as multicolored light shot from the winged silhouette's hands, placing a series of talismans upon the green shadow. The green shadow's form blurred, and the crimson glow in its eyes gradually dimmed. Then something unexpected occurred. Under the restriction of the talismans, the green shadow began to shrink, steadily compressing until it became a fist-sized green sphere, faintly pulsing with weak green light. The winged silhouette showed no surprise. He withdrew his abilities and simply extended a hand into the air. The green sphere immediately shot through the air and arrived effortlessly before him. At this moment, the winged silhouette turned toward the stunned old man in azure armor and said with a faint smile, "Fellow Taoist Yue, it seems I arrived a bit late." Are you unharmed? The old man gradually regained his senses and recalled the flying sword before him. He returned the smile and cupped his fist in salute. Brother Han, what are you saying? Had you not intervened, I would have been in grave danger. I have long heard of your abilities, and now I see those rumors were no exaggeration. Even a high-grade member of the Shadow Tribe is no match for you. The winged silhouette was none other than a young man clad in azure armor, Han Li. At this time, Han Li had already advanced to the mid-deity transformation stage. Han Li chuckled lightly. Brother Yue overpraises me. It is only that my techniques happen to restrain the Shadow Tribe. Against other foreign races, they would not be as effective. Fellow Taoist Han is too modest. Who would have thought that your squad could patrol for decades without a single casualty? I have heard that during these years you have slain quite a number of foreign spies. With such achievements, my praise is far from sufficient. The old man laughed wryly and shook his head. Han Li smiled slightly and did not continue the topic. Instead, he glanced around. Then the other fellow Taoists should be safe as well. They should be fine. Now that this Shadow Tribe member has been subdued, the puppets under his control should have already dispersed. My subordinates were briefly possessed earlier, but as it was only for a short time, their vitality should suffer little harm at worst. But how did you come to be here? Where are your subordinates? The old man tactfully changed the subject. Han Li took out a jade box from his storage bracelet and placed the restrained green sphere inside. Then he calmly replied, "It was merely coincidence. I recently obtained a high-grade foreign spirit plate, which has a wider detection range. I happened to be patrolling nearby when it reacted. As for my subordinates, I instructed them to remain where they were before I came here alone. So that is the case. It seems I have escaped disaster by fortune alone." The old man let out a long breath. At that moment, the two black-armored guards nearby stepped forward and expressed their gratitude to Han Li for his timely assistance. In the distance, the other cultivators returned one after another, arriving before Han Li and offering similar thanks. Han Li exchanged a few polite words before bidding farewell and departing as a streak of azure light. After Han Li disappeared from sight, a large man with a fierce expression muttered, "I heard that when Senior Han first arrived at Deep Heaven City, he was only at the early deity transformation stage, yet his strength already rivaled mid-stage cultivators. Then 10 years ago, he advanced to mid-stage, and his abilities became even more unfathomable." Another black-armored guard said with admiration, "That's not all. I heard that during his decades of patrol, he personally killed 8 high-grade foreign beings. He is far beyond an ordinary dark azure guard. Could it be that ascended cultivators are all this formidable?" The middle-aged woman snorted lightly. Ascended cultivators are indeed stronger than those born in the spirit realm, but that Senior Han is exceptional even among them. The surrounding cultivators were startled upon hearing this. After Han Li had fully disappeared, the old man stroked his beard, deep in thought. After a while, he waved his hand and led his squad away. Several hundred kilometers away, an azure streak cut through the sky. The light faded, revealing Han Li. At the same moment, more than a dozen streaks of light rose from the ground and stopped before him, revealing black-armored cultivators. "Squad leader, Senior Han," they called out in unison, standing at attention as they hovered in the air. After several decades, the squad remained intact. However, their attitude toward Han Li had changed completely. Their respect was evident, and there was no longer the slightest trace of disobedience. This was only natural. Other squads assigned to similar patrol regions suffered heavy losses. There were even instances where more than half a squad had to be replaced. Although Han Li's squad also encountered many dangers, he resolved each situation with ease, gradually earning unquestioned authority. Moreover, under his leadership, the squad gained considerable rewards, which further solidified their loyalty. Han Li nodded and said calmly, "Let's move." The foreign being was a green shadow. "It has already been dealt with." A young-looking cultivator chuckled. "A green shadow. That is indeed troublesome. But with squad leader's divine essence-fused light restraining, it must have been effortless. If it had been a scarlet shadow, there would have been a different matter. Hanley snorted softly. A scarlet shadow is something even spatial tempering cultivators find difficult to handle. How could I deal with one? Enough talk. Let's proceed. Once we finish patrolling this final area, we can rest for another year. Last time we encountered a high-grade cave hollow tribe being here. This time it was a high-grade shadow tribe member. Cultivator Ma's expression darkened slightly. Indeed, hasn't this become too frequent over the past 10 years? Even if foreign scouts appear regularly, it shouldn't be to this extent. High-grade beings are also appearing more often entering the swamp without hesitation. I've heard that in the Buried Bone Desert, managed by the demon race, they are also encountering large numbers of foreign scouts. Many transformed demons have died during patrols. Could it be that the foreign races are preparing to attack Deep Heaven City? Hearing this, everyone's expressions changed, and their earlier ease vanished. Fairy Shoe, still as composed as before, frowned slightly. That seems unlikely. It has only been 30,000 years since the last foreign invasion of Deep Heaven City. Aren't such attacks usually launched every 60,000 years? After a war, foreign tribes generally require 60 to 100,000 years before they can mount another invasion. Of course, if unforeseen circumstances arise and they are willing to expend their strength, it is not impossible for them to act sooner. During the Great 100-Tribe War 500 years ago, the foreign tribes launched 5 successive waves of attacks over a span of 100,000 years. That conflict nearly exhausted the strength of both the human and demon races, pushing us to the brink of destruction. It then took another 100,000 years for us to recover and flourish again. Naturally, some of those foreign tribes were completely eradicated during that war. The large, green-eyed man felt a chill run through him. His eyes widened as he said, "The Great 100-Tribe War. You must be joking. That war swept across most of the spirit realm. How can you suggest something like that could happen again? And in the end, didn't we emerge victorious?" Fellow Taoist Ma's words are truly unsettling. If another war of that scale were to occur, it would be extremely difficult for us to survive. During that war, mortals were largely unaffected, but 9 out of 10 cultivators suffered greatly, Fairy Shoe said, her voice carrying a trace of cold unease. That's right. How could such a thing? Upon hearing the words 100-Tribe War, the expressions of the others changed drastically. Their faces turned pale as if those words alone carried a terrifying weight, making it difficult for them to remain composed. That's enough. We've only encountered an increase in foreign tribe scouts recently. That alone does not mean another Great 100-Tribe War is imminent. The likelihood is extremely low, and even if such a war were to occur, it is not something within our control. For now, we should focus on completing our patrol assignment. That is what matters. As for matters of war, they will be handled by the Council of Elders. Hanley spoke calmly, his expression steady, as he issued his instructions and took the lead. The others immediately ceased their discussion and followed after him. In the blink of an eye, their figures vanished beyond the horizon. Several days later, Hanley and the others were seated atop a gold-court boat as they returned to the giant pagoda within Deep Heaven City, while the others remained in the hall to rest. Hanley departed from the squad's base alone and ascended toward the upper levels of the stone pagoda. After climbing 10 floors, he arrived before a heavily guarded gate and entered an unremarkable large hall. The walls of the hall shimmered faintly with numerous restrictive formations. Their number was considerable and their power appeared formidable. Inside, aside from a stone table and a middle-aged man in white robes seated beside it, there was no one else. As Han Li stepped inside, the middle-aged man slowly opened his eyes and glanced at him calmly. "So it is, esteemed nephew Han. What did you obtain during this patrol? Is the target alive or dead? Which tribe does it belong to?" The man's tone suggested he was quite familiar with Han Li. "Senior One, report that I have captured a Shadow Tribe scout alive." Han Li did not dare to be careless. He respectfully saluted, then took out a jade box and placed it on the table. "The Shadow Tribe. Tsk. Tsk. It is rare to capture one alive. Let me take a look. A trace of excitement appeared on the middle-aged man's face. Han Li formed an incantation gesture and struck the table lightly. The stone table immediately emitted a white glow, and a spell formation roughly 3 meters wide appeared, with the jade box positioned at its center. A layer of silver light emerged firmly restraining the jade box. Without concern for the formation, the middle-aged man flicked his sleeve toward the box and opened it, revealing a faintly glowing green sphere within. After examining it, he showed clear satisfaction. A green shadow. This is a high-grade shadow tribe entity, rarely encountered, and it is still alive. Nephew, this will earn you significant merit. You praise me too highly, senior. I have heard that in half a month, Elder Xing will be giving a lecture on talismans at the Deep Heaven Hall. Is this true? That is correct. This time Elder Xing will be the one lecturing. Although I am unsure whether you study talisman refinement, Elder Xing is renowned for his expertise in this field, so the lecture will most likely focus on that. Could it be that you are interested, Nephew Han? The middle-aged man asked with some surprise. Han Li answered directly, I have recently begun studying talismans and have gained a few insights. I hope to receive some guidance. The middle-aged man frowned slightly and said slowly, if the Tao of talismans is studied deeply, it can indeed have many useful applications in battle. However, it remains a supplementary technique and offers little benefit to one's cultivation. For you to have advanced to the mid-stage not long after ascending to the spirit realm places you among the rare few, even among ascended cultivators. Your talent is evident. It would be best if you did not allow yourself to be distracted, lest it hinder your primary cultivation. Thank you for your concern, senior. I will keep your words in mind. However, I still wish to attend Elder Xing's lecture. I wonder if my accumulated merit is sufficient. Han Li showed no intention of retreating. Since you have already made your decision, I will not say more. Combining your previous merits with this one, you have more than enough to enter the Deep Heaven Hall. Haha, the hall hosts a lecture every 10 years, and you seem to attend every single one. That cannot be easy for you either. Very well, I will record your contributions. Take this to the Merit Evaluation Pavilion and exchange it for a lecture token. The man took out a jade badge, inscribed something onto it, and handed it to Han Li. Han Li accepted the badge with clear satisfaction, saluted once more, and then took his leave. After watching Han Li depart, the middle-aged man first shook his head, then nodded slightly. The jade box on the table closed on its own. He formed another incantation gesture and pointed at the table. The formation flared brightly, and with a flash of white light, the box vanished. As the middle-aged man transmitted the green shadow to a restricted area, Han Li had already flown out of the Deep Heaven City market. Several hours later, he descended before the profound Zenith Hall. He handed a pouch of spirit stones to the guards, accepted a concealment pendant, and entered. After passing through a long corridor, Han Li emerged into a large hall filled with both humans and demons engaged in trade. More than 300 figures were present, each concealed within silver or black light. Dozens of vendors were scattered throughout the hall. Han Li swept his gaze across the area before it settled on a stone pillar at the center. A demon stood there motionless. Han Li took a steady breath and walked toward it. Before he arrived, a soft chuckle reached his ears, followed by a gentle, pleasant voice. You've finally come. After our last meeting, I thought you had entered secluded cultivation. I assumed it would be decades before we met again. Han Li smiled faintly and replied through voice transmission, I only came this time to try my luck. I did not expect fellow Taoist Yan to be here as well. It seems you have also sensed that something is amiss recently and wish to conclude our transaction. After a brief pause, the woman's voice turned cold. Something is wrong. You should have noticed. Look at the hall. There are several times more people than usual. Does that not indicate something? Han Li replied calmly, paying no attention to her tone. Could it be that you have heard something? A faint gleam appeared in her eyes. I do not know much. However, high-grade cultivators have begun mobilizing forces. In the regions under our watch, the number of foreign tribe scouts has increased significantly, about sixfold. What about your side? After a moment of hesitation, the woman answered honestly, "It is much the same. Those old fellows have been appearing more frequently, and there are even unfamiliar faces in the city. Their cultivation is quite strong. They should be newly arrived subordinates from the 7 demon lands." I see. It appears that something is about to occur. How often do you encounter foreign tribe attacks? Hanley asked. The woman replied with a hint of gloom. 3 out of 10 patrols. Otherwise, why would the city undergo such noticeable changes? 30%, that is indeed high. Hanley let out a quiet breath and fell into brief thought. The woman said indifferently, "That's right. After completing this transaction, I will not appear here again. If fellow Taoist values his life, it would be best to leave this city. Otherwise, once the foreign tribes attack, it will be difficult for someone of our cultivation to escape disaster. Your suggestion is straightforward, but as a cultivator of this city, how could I simply leave? Moreover, each year I must—" Han Li gave a wry smile, but suddenly stopped mid-sentence, as if something had occurred to him. "Hey, leaving the city now is indeed troublesome. Our races differ, and I am unable to help you. Fortunately, even if war breaks out, you should still have several years to prepare. That is enough. Let us proceed with the trade."